running some baits here. We are back in the sticks. There's no doubt about that. And we've got some baits, some bait buckets here that we're gonna set up. So with all due luck, we will have some bears.
Yeah. 9-2. Well, the last hunter went home this morning, and I'm relaxing on the deck. Virgil's taking a nap. We spent the day taking tree stands and down and bringing bait sights in, barrels and trail cameras, and we did that most of the day yesterday too, while my son Sterling was the last hunter here. He came in a little later, but we ended up going 4 for 5, and I really think we could have gone 5 for 5. Unfortunately, it just didn't work out that way. So I thought I'd just walk you through the season from beginning to end. I shot some video, not a lot. None of my hunters shot video other than my son Sterling, who came in a little bit late and actually got the kill on film. But he doesn't like being on YouTube. He doesn't want to be in front of the camera at all, and I honor that and respect that. So I'm going to show you some small parts of his hunt, but he just, yeah, it's, you know, he's just that way, and it's okay. The day one, I did quite a bit of video of taking people out into the stands, and so as you see, as I roll through that, I'll just talk a little bit about why I chose the stands that I did. I had 6 baits that were really going strong with daylight activity, and with 4 hunters that gave me pretty good options. So I had one area that had 3 new baits in it this year, and they were all going pretty good, so I decided to put 3 of the hunters on that. And then another bait that I really wanted to get somebody on, unfortunately, was only about 7-8 miles from camp, and the other ones are about 25 miles, maybe more, from camp. You know, it's a 30-minute drive. Don has hunted with me several times. He hunted, his wife Terry hunted last year here. She had a tag. This year Don had a tag. Don's hunted with me in Ontario, and I just asked him if he would be willing to drive his truck and pull my 4-wheeler on a trailer out to this bait. So that's what we did. He took his truck. Don and Terry sat in the stand. I put him in, and then had Troy with me, and then I headed up to a place that we call the Clear Cut, which is where it's a good place to park and access these other 3 baits that are all about 2.5 miles apart. So we got up there, and we put Troy in a stand that had 2 bears on it that were somewhat sporadic, but the activity was more daytime than nighttime. It was a good ladder stand, and he's handgun hunting. It was a close shot on probably 15-16 yards, and I thought his chances of seeing a bear were pretty good. Then I put Mike on a stand that I hung for a left-handed bow hunter. Mike is left-handed and he's bow hunting, so I had to have a specific stand for him. So I put him on a stand that had a ton of bears on it. It had a sow with 2 cubs, a sow with 3 cubs that had a GPS collar on her, had multiple bigger males, a couple of females too. So there were just a lot of bears on that bait. I thought it's a really good chance that he's going to shoot a bear there. Then I had another bait that's about 2 miles from Mike, and it's right off the edge of that Clear Cut that we're parking in, and it had been dead for the first couple weeks of baiting, and then all of a sudden it just blew up, and had a big male on it with 2 blue ear tags, had a female on it, had actually one of the sows with cubs from Mike's bait 2 miles away was going back and forth between that bait, and she's got little cubs. They're this year's cubs. It's just amazing to me that they'll go 2 miles through swamps and over logs and through pushing through heavy underbrush and back and forth. One day they'll be on one bait, one day they'll be on another bait, and it kind of blows my mind that they do that, but they do. Mike and Troy and Jason were on those 3 baits, and then Don and Terry were down closer to camp here. I kind of thought it'd be slower activity because it's been cool and it's been rainy a lot and just cool weather, and then all of a sudden it just blew up into upper 80s, and so I thought, well, this is going to slow things down some, but I bet you we're going to have a couple bears to skin. And without a guide, it's just me and Virgil, and I told these guys, hey, you know, if y'all, I'm not going to tell you what bears to shoot. It's a little riskier being selective this year than in a normal year, but if you all shoot a bear, we'll deal with it. We'll figure it out. And so don't let that affect what you decide to shoot or not to shoot. I was absolutely flabbergasted by what happened, so I'm going to roll a short video from the next day. Well, it's day 2, and all 4 hunters are in their stands again. And I know that's not what you're expecting. It certainly wasn't what I was expecting. I'm totally flabbergasted that nobody even saw a bear last night. Now, it was hot. I mean, we've had cool, rainy weather, and then all of a sudden we have a hot, sunny day, and it's in the upper 80s, and I was not expecting. I thought it would be slower, but nobody even saw a bear. So tonight should be different. I think we'll get a couple tonight. I checked the cards, and there was multiple bears at all of the baits that we are hunting in the 24 hours prior to putting people in the stands. So it's bizarre, but that's what happened. And so tonight is the second night of the season, and there's a northwest wind, and the highs in the mid to upper 70s today. It just feels like a comfortable day to sit in the stand, and that is when you see the most bears, is when it's just a comfortable evening. So let's see what happens. Everybody's out there and ready to roll. So as I said, I thought it probably would slow things down. I had no idea that nobody was going to see a bear. So I just kind of analyzed all my options, you know, went through the baits and the trail camera pictures the next day, and I just thought, you know what, we're just going to do an exact repeat. We're just going to go back to the exact same baits. I mean, I had a good strategy. I'm going to stay with it. So when I walked in to put Jason into his bait at the clear cut, I put him in first. I bumped sow with cubs off the bait. I thought, well, shoot, I don't mind having a sow with cubs on the bait. They're kind of like live bait in a way. They do eat a lot of bait, but the other thing is that if they're there and a boar comes in, his attention is focused on them rather than looking around and seeing somebody in a tree stand, and he hears the sounds and he's got all the smells already and everything. So it's really not a bad thing to have a sow with cubs or smaller bears on the bait when the bigger ones come. So the way I had this set up, I was going to pick up Jason first and then go get Mike, and then I had loaded up the four-wheelers and everything, and then go get Troy, who is in a different location that I went to with a truck, and so he's going to have to sit in the stand 30 to 45 minutes after legal shooting hour and just wait in the dark for us. So he did that the first night, and then I was going to have to do that again the second night, and I had Virgil up there with me. We're sitting there about 6:30, and all of a sudden we hear a gunshot, and I said, was that coming from the bait where Troy's at? And Virgil's like, it sounded like it was from over there. Turns out there's another couple guys that are baiting very close to us, and they're driving by right by where we're parking and going into their bait. About 5 minutes later, I hear another gunshot, and it's over from a different direction. Since we're standing outside the truck, I'm like, that's definitely Troy that shot that. He shot a nice big sow, and we went in there, recovered that fairly quickly. He was shaking so bad, he said I just couldn't shoot with my handgun, so I put it down, picked up the rifle, and the bear was 20-25 yards behind the bait, and it only went 30 yards probably after the shot. He made a great shot on it, and we recovered that bear. It had 2 red ear tags, and believe it or not, it was on the bait earlier that day, and it was the first time it had been on that bait. Didn't have any other video of that bear on any baits. It was a brand new bear. And when I saw that, I think it was 11:39 if I remember right, that bear was on the bait. And when these bears hit a bait during the day, they come back in the evening almost every time. And so I said, I'll bet you anything that Jason's going to see that bear tonight Sure enough, he did, and he killed it. I emailed the biologist about the tags, and he told me all kinds of good information about this bear. It's a 4-year-old sow, and I'm going to do an entire video on the tags, so I think you'll be interested in that. You know, it's almost 2 hours before dark, and we got that bear out of there, and we just put it in the back of Virgil's truck and loaded up his 4-wheeler, and I said, take Jason back to camp, start skinning his bear. So that worked out pretty good. Then instead of having to pick up Jason first, I drove in just about 100 yards from where Mike was and sat there till right at dark, shut the side-by-side off, and just waited. And then I went in to get him at dark. So when I went in to get Mike, grabbed him, then I went, loaded up, went and got Troy, and neither one of them had seen a bear, and Don and Terry hadn't seen a bear. And there's so many bears on that bait, Don and Terry, and then lots of daylight pictures. It's over and over and over. That's where the sow and boar that were together all the time, a chocolate boar and the black sow. There was multiple other chocolate bears. I think there's 4 chocolates on that bait. It just baffled me. But anyway, so we got one bear that day. So on day 3, we moved Don, and he decided to sit alone. I also moved the other 2 guys. I put Mike in where Jason H. shot his bear last year, and he wanted to use his climbing stand. There was a good tree in there, I thought, for that. Then I went all the way back into Raspberry, which is way back in, and I put Troy in that. There was a chocolate bear on that. There was another boar, and then a sow with 2 cubs on that bait. So we hadn't hunted it yet, just felt good. I come back out, and then Jason was with me, and he said he wanted to help, and so I said I'm going to hang a stand up on Lost Lake number 2. So we went in there and hung the stand on Lost Lake number 2, put a ladder in there, because that bait had just kind of taken off in the last couple of days. It had been pretty dead. It's been so sporadic this year. It's really weird how, you know, typically once the bears get on the baits, they're fairly regular, you know, whether they're nocturnal or daytime or whatever, but at least they're fairly regular. This year, sometimes a bait will go without anything on it for 2 or 3 days, and all of a sudden I'll have 2 or 3 bears on it, and then it'll die down again, and it was just really weird this year. I had baits that I would have a bear visit it every 3 or 4 days, and sometimes at night, sometimes in the day, they'd eat a little bit and then just move on. They didn't just stay there and fill up and lay up nearby like we typically do and what we always want them to do. We got back to the truck after hanging that stand, and Mike's at the truck, and he had walked out. He says, I can't get this climber to work in that tree, so I don't know what to do. And I said, well, let's just go put you in that stand we just put up. So we put him in the stand that we just put up, and then we went back and loaded up the 4-wheelers and stuff, and I had a truck, and Jason had a truck, and then next thing you know, I get a text from Mike. He's like, I shot one and I heard a death moan, like we had just put him in that stand a few minutes before and just gotten back to the truck to load up the 4-wheeler. So we turned right back around and headed back up there again, and we recovered his bear, put it in the truck with Jason. I said, take it back and tell Virgil to start skinning. So bear number 2 was in the books.
Well, from that piece of an angle, probably. Yeah. Let's see if we can.
So
It probably popped out at some point, and wherever it was.
it's just amazing to me that, look at this blood here, and we never found a speck of blood on the trail.
Isn't that something?
You know, that turned out to be the only bear that was seen that night. So on day 4, I became the vitamin man, 1 a day. So on day 4, my son Sterling came in. I got Troy and Don, and so I got 3 people now. I decided to put Don in a stand that's pretty close to camp here. It's about 5 miles from camp, and it just didn't have really any big bears on it, but it had consistent activity of 1, 2, 3-year-old bears that coming in and out of there fairly regular, and about as consistent as you can expect for a crazy year where there's so much for him to eat in the woods. And then I put Troy on a different stand and put Sterling out there. I think it was about 5:30 when Don texted and says, I got one. So I was just getting ready to load up and head back up to the northern part of the area where Sterling and Troy were at. So when I got up there, I started getting text pictures from Don and Terry and Virgil, and they were recovering Don's bear. I'll show you a little bit about that. Anyway, so they're getting that bear back to camp when I'm getting ready to go in and pick up Sterling and Troy. Sterling didn't see anything, but I got a text from Troy when I was about to go in there, and he said there's a sow with cubs on the bait, and it's dark, and I got to walk in, and it's one of the not very fun parts of what I do here. So I'm probably 150 yards away, and when I pulled up to pick him up, I revved up the motor a little bit, and he said that when I did that, the sow started to move off, and two of the cubs really stood at attention and started to, look that way and so forth. And then as I was walking in, I started clapping like that, and I got him out of the tree and down and got him the heck out of there. Just a dicey situation. The next day is Troy's last day because he's got to leave early, and he says, I want to sit all day. Can I go in the morning? And the big swamp bait where Don and Terry were sitting, we got daylight pictures in there whenever somebody's not in the stand, and so I'm like, I'll put you in the morning. We got up at 5, I put him in there, and I've never done that before, but I'm like, you know what do we got to lose? He's got to leave tomorrow morning. So we put him in there. He sat, 14 hours or something like that. Troy did see a total of 4 bears. He had the sow with 2 cubs, and then one evening at the last light, he had a bear come in, and he put the dot from his pistol on it and just didn't feel comfortable making an ethical shot, so he passed up that shot. I put Sterling in the bait where Troy had been the night before, and when I went to pick him up, Sterling texts me and he says there's a sow with cubs on the bait, and here it's a different sow and different cubs. So I had to go into the same bait with difference. This time there's 3 cubs on the bait, and had to spook them off the bait. I did it the same way I did the night before, and then got Sterling the heck out of there, and we headed back, and Troy, he had to go home. Jason went home, Mike went home because he'd already had his bear. So the big swamp bait had been hunted 4 times in 5 days, and I just never do that, but it just seemed crazy that there's bears in there during the day every time nobody's sitting there. I had 2 choices of where to put Sterling. Don had sat down at Sucker Brook, and people came through because there's another bait back in there, and didn't see anything, and I thought maybe I'll put Sterling in there. There's a really big bear on that bait, just a toad, and he had been really consistent, but once we started hunting and people are moving through there, he got real erratic. And then there was another medium-sized bear in there, and I thought, you know what, I just can't understand why we haven't killed a bear on the big swamp, and I can't believe I'm going to put somebody in there 5 days out of 6, but I'm going to put him in there. Put him in there about, 4 o'clock, and I pulled the card on the camera, and I says, I'll text you and let you know if there's any bears that have been in here during the day. And unbelievably, there was 5 different bears there between 6:30 a.m. and 4 p.m. when I put him in the stand. And that's the bait where Troy sat the entire day the day before and never saw a bear. And I'm like, how in the world do these bears, they've got to have that stand pegged or something, and it's so thick in there, it's not like they can just come somewhere and sit 50 yards away and look. It's just so thick they can't do it, but they must be circling around and smelling or something. And I'm like, well, now I put Sterling in here, we're just going to have to live with it, because those bears have been in and out of there all day already. There's a pretty good chance a couple of them are going to come back and try to hit the bait again. If they don't, they don't, but So about 6 o'clock, I get a text from Sterling. It says, I shot one. I'm not sure where I hit it, but it's laying over there moaning. And so I'm like, stay put, I'm on my way. Me and Virgil come rushing in there, and you know, he's, I don't know, 15 minutes from camp here, so I brought the sled in there, and we found the arrow. It looked good. I mean, the blood looked good and stuff like that, and we tracked the bear 55 yards, and there's a chocolate, and it's a pretty nice chocolate. It's one of the ones anybody would have been happy to have, and it's pretty exciting for me that he got it. But he doesn't want to be on video or anything like that, so we're minimizing the amount. We filmed everything. So we went 4 for 5, and now that everybody's gone, I just feel really bad that I didn't have another day or two to help Troy get a bear. I just feel confident that we could have got him one. But that's the way things work out, and I hope he comes back and hope he had a good time. We had kind of light eaters in camp, and I probably overfed them, and there's a lot of leftovers in the fridge every day. Just had a tremendous group of guys. It was just so much fun to have the guy. They did quite a bit of fishing out here. It just seemed like every time I turn around, somebody's doing something to help out. They're building a campfire, they're washing dishes, or taking out the trash, or helping fill buckets. And one of my four-wheeler trailers, the lights weren't working properly, and next thing you know, they're out there rewiring my trailer for me. It's just, I couldn't ask for a nicer bunch of guys in camp. So where do we go from here? Virgil and I got all the stands and everything pulled. We got the last of it pulled today. Putting stuff away, still got quite a bit of sorting to do. Got a little bit of bait left I got to deal with. Got Sterling's bear in the freezer here. That's going to have to be butchered. And I'm headed to Maine in a little over a week, about a week and a half. I'm going on a bear and moose hunt combo in Maine, which I'll also be vlogging. I've got a Ontario tag burning a hole in my pocket that I thought I would probably run up to Ontario if I could find an outfitter that had a slot for me. As you know, that fiasco happened this spring. I bought an Ontario tag. It's still good in the fall, but there's just so much work that's piled up at home. I've only been home twice in almost a month. I mean, 3 days, less than a month. I've only been home twice. And I can do a lot on my laptop here, but it's just been too chaotic, and I got a lot to do. I don't think I'm going to be able to go to Ontario. I just don't know how to make it fit in here. But I got a friend who guides down by where I live, and he guides for a week down there and then comes way up northern Minnesota and guides for a week. And he's like, if I got some baits going in 451 where I can buy a tag over the counter, he said maybe you could use a couple of my baits or something. That's an option. I just texted him and said, give me a call. Let's talk about what that might look like. But the vlogs aren't over by any means. Got 2 whitetail hunts, Iowa and Kansas this year. Virgil's heading out in the morning, and I got quite a bit of more cleaning and putting stuff away to do here. Probably going to try to spend the evening doing some fishing, and then head home maybe tomorrow night or the day after. But thanks for being a subscriber. Thanks for following along, and we got more stuff coming, so we'll see you soon.